In today's video, Democrat Congressman has filed articles of impeachment against President Trump. Stephen Miller rips the governor of Illinois, and President Trump hosted the Super Bowl champs without their star quarterback.
Never before in my life have I called for mass protests, for mobilization, for disruption, but I am now. These Republicans cannot know a moment of peace. They have to understand that we will fight their cruelty with every megaphone and microphone that we have. We must castigate them on the soapbox and then punish them at the ballot box. They must feel in their bones that when we survive this shameful episode of American history with our democracy intact, because we have no alternative but to do just that we will relegate their portraits to the museum halls reserved for tyrants and traitors.
All right, now that's what the governor had to say. And so if we want to talk about misconduct, I guess we could throw that in there because the bar for misconduct seems to be really low these days, according to Democrats. Here's what Stephen Miller said this morning about the governor's comments.
Is Pritzer inciting insurrection, and will DOJ take action?
Well, what I would say is that his comments, if nothing else, clearly could be construed as inciting violence. So President Trump survived 2 assassination attempts against his life. Of course, there's been many more credible threats against President Trump and his family and associates. We've, of course, seen the spate of left-wing domestic terrorism all across this country. By the way, the destruction of property sits directly adjacent to attacks on humans and physical attacks. In other words, once you tolerate and once you allow for attacks on property, you're just a step away from people throwing Molotov cocktails into people's homes. Of course, secondly, right, just this war that Democrat governors and mayors are waging against federal law enforcement. I mean, this is nullificationist behavior. This is secessionist behavior. Where they're saying they don't recognize the supremacy of federal law enforcement in terms of protecting the lives and livelihoods of American citizens against a foreign invasion. We've never seen anything like it. And of course, the result of their conduct is that they're allowing illegal aliens to go free and rape and murder their own citizens. So I can imagine having a leader in a city or a state that would privilege the well-being of illegal alien murderers over their own citizens, but that's where we are right now.
Now, of course, Stephen Miller had to hit back. He laid out the hypocrisy from Democrats, especially the governor, who seems to be more focused on illegal aliens than actual American citizens. Where was he screaming when it came to Rachel Moore and Laken Riley and the 13 service members who lost their lives? I can go on and on and on and give you guys the normal spiel, but I think you guys know where I'm going with all this. Now, you'd think he would stop there, right? We're talking about the governor. No. He's taking his violent rhetoric to a whole new level. He just went on MSDNC and had this to say.
Remember, my family emigrated to this country from Ukraine when the Russians were killing Jews during the pogroms. This country accepted us as refugees, and we had nothing. What I feel, anyway, is that the dangers that my family experienced in Ukraine, the dangers that we saw in Nazi Germany, especially in the earliest days of Nazi Germany, are the dangers that we need to react to now. If we don't, things will get much, much worse. And so we've got to raise alarm bells to everybody. It's a 5-alarm fire, everyone. It's time to step out of your comfort zone and step out into the streets and speak up and make your voices heard.
So essentially, the governor is claiming we're in the early days of Nazi Germany. Tell me you're delusional without telling me you are delusional. No wonder you have Democrats disagreeing with the governor, and they don't believe this approach is appropriate. Now, let me just address something really quick, and I feel like I have to keep saying things like this. Why do Democrats continue to disrespect people who were actually impacted by Hitler and what happened in Nazi Germany? Can someone please explain that to me? And here's the thing. I said it earlier. Not all Democrats agree with this type of rhetoric, and they do not agree with this strategy of just going out to the streets and protesting.
You know, if Coca-Cola had a bunch of people no longer drinking Coca-Cola, you'd want to actually go interview people who used to drink Coca-Cola and ask them, how come you're not drinking Coca-Cola anymore? I don't get the sense of that at all. There's still this idea, oh, no, if we just sell it better, if we just do it better. And then on the last comment, it's just kind of interesting. I do think what happened to the Democratic Party is they kept comparing Biden to Trump rather than Biden to what a president should be able to do. And I think it was like, well, Trump's kind of out there, and it's good enough to go against Trump. Well, no, like that shouldn't have been but I do think whatever that explanation is, I think it all had to do with them judging Biden through the prism of, well, Trump's sort of out there, so it's good enough for that.
All right, so I don't know what he was trying to say, but let me just give you the bottom line here, all right? Democrats are in serious trouble. We already know that. Anything that they try today won't work. And at this point in time, the best advice is for them just to sit back and allow President Trump to be the president and to find ways to work with him. And if he fails, like you guys say he will, you'll be there to pick up the pieces. And if he doesn't fail and he succeeds, at least you didn't destroy your party in the process of trying to stop his success.
In 2022, after the midterms, I said, if you want to run for president and be the Democratic nominee, anybody who wants to run should be able to run. Unfortunately, nobody, well, a couple people, but
Dean Phillips.
Right, Dean Phillips stepped up. Democrats, we should have had a primary for this midterm election. And we didn't. And so now we're living with the consequences of it. I hope that our party wakes up and realizes it. And that me saying that doesn't mean that I don't respect Joe Biden. But there's a reality in that we should have given our voters an opportunity to make a decision for themselves. And by the time we had to make a decision, it was too late.
By the way, it's just 3 straight nominations where Democratic voters didn't get a chance to pick the nominee. The elites picked Hillary Clinton, the elites picked Joe Biden, and the elites picked Kamala Harris. There was no actual set of voters who felt like they had a say in this.
And isn't it interesting that Bernie Sanders and AOC and the voters are claiming that it's the elites controlling everything when it comes to President Trump and Elon Musk, but they had nothing to say when it happened to them, not once, not twice, but 3 times. Now, speaking of that level of delusion, this takes us to our next story. A congressman out of Michigan is now filing articles of impeachment against President Trump.
This is Congressman Shri Thanedar. Donald Trump has already done real damage to our democracy, but defying a unanimous 9-0 Supreme Court ruling, that has to be the final straw. It's time we impeach Donald J. Trump. The court said the wrongfully deported Kilmer Garcia must be allowed to return and receive due process. Trump ignored it. He ignored the Constitution. He ignored the very checks and balances that keep our democracy intact. This isn't an isolated incident. It's part of a dangerous, deliberate pattern. That's why today I introduced a resolution to impeach Donald J. Trump, outlining 7 articles of impeachment.
Now, part of you might be thinking this is a joke and someone's trolling because this might be AI in the video. No, this is a real congressman, folks, from Michigan. Now, I never heard of him, just to be honest here. But more importantly, this is going nowhere. You know why? It's called political theater. Okay? 1, he does not have the support. And 2, Democrats do not have the votes. This is why the midterms is obviously important, because if Republicans lose, this is the first thing Democrats will do, because they're obsessed with prosecuting President Trump and not obsessed with creating solutions that they can collaborate with Republicans on to help people like you and me.
He is attempting to consolidate unchecked power and erode the constitutional limits of the presidency. In this country, we have presidents, not kings. That's not just misconduct. Is impeachable misconduct. This isn't leadership, it's tyranny.
Okay, let me just take a moment because I have something special I want to share with you guys. This right here in front of you is called Blackout Coffee, okay? This is the first coffee brand that I've chosen to actually partner with because you know I'm obsessed with coffee, but let me explain to you why. It's a bold, premium, small batch, America First coffee that's brewed right here in the USA. So whether you're grinding through the early mornings like me, long nights like me, or just need the extra jolt of energy, Blackout Coffee has you covered. From rich, dark roasts to cold, ready-to-drink options, everything they make is built to fuel patriots. Here is the most important part. For every bag you buy, they send 2 cups of coffee to active duty military members. And as a thank you for joining the movement, they're giving my listeners 20% off their first order. All you have to do is go to blackoutcoffee.com/Devori or use promo code Devori. Again, that is blackoutcoffee.com/Devori. Now, speaking of being radical, this brings us to our next story. The Philadelphia Eagles, Super Bowl champs, visited the White House today, but of course their star quarterback wasn't there.
The Super Bowl MVP quarterback of the Philadelphia Eagles, Jalen Hurts, decided to not show up today for this thing and just humiliate himself at the end of the day. They called it a scheduling conflict. We know that's a lie. It was very obvious last week when he was asked about it that he is fully bought into all of these ridiculous narratives about Trump. Take a listen.
Are you planning on visiting the White House next week?
Got it.
Thank you so much.
And he doesn't even have a pair to sit there and explain why he's not going. Just run away. Trump spoke fondly of Jalen Hurts today when honoring the Eagles. He called him a terrific guy and a player, trying to kill him with kindness, I guess.
I think it says a lot about Jalen Hurts, who froze when he was asked a question about why he's not going to the White House. I mean, you'd think you'll stand on principle and explain why you're not going. And it's not that really he owes anybody an explanation. He can do whatever he wants. Honestly, it's a free country. We know that. But the fact of the matter is, if you think going to the White House is disrespectful to whatever you believe in, which we know he's eaten up a lot of that Trump propaganda, I think it's just more disrespectful to the office of the presidency and the people who have come before you who were not privileged like you that got to see and visit the president. Now, speaking of the president, here's what he said about Jalen Hurts earlier today.
Complimenting Saquon's historic season was an incredible year from star quarterback Jalen Hurts, and he had a great season and a great game. Finished with 32 touchdowns on the year, turning in one stellar performance after another. A terrific guy and a terrific player.
Now, remember, Democrats are in the business of dehumanizing President Trump, so they won't react to those comments, right? They will continue to probably support Jalen's right to skip this entire award ceremony. That's number one, which he has the right to do so, by the way. But number two, they won't be supporting it for the right reasons, if you know what I mean. They're doing it for political reasons, okay? Now, here's what Sage Steele had to say about this, and I am definitely in agreement with it.
I don't care if AOC is the president of the United States. If I get invited to the White House, I'm going to the White House.
I know. I agree. It is sad, but at the same time, this is actually progress, Rob, because you remember back in 2018 where President Trump invited them to the White House after their first Super Bowl victory, and then he heard most weren't going to show up, so he canceled the whole thing. So this is major progress, right? We should look at this as a positive sign. I mean, you know, the bar is really low, and that's what I'm having to refer to. But at the end of the day, I will say this. It disappoints me. However, that is his right, and I have to respect Jalen Hurts' decision. I do wish the reporter at the red carpet the other day had not tried to answer the question for him and asked him why not. But then again, that would be journalistically sound, and most people don't do that anymore. How about Saquon Barkley, the Eagles running back, right? Who was golfing with Trump and was certainly there and shot back. I know you know that on Twitter about, guys, why do you have a problem? It's a sitting president.
Now, Jeffrey Lurie, who is the CEO and chairman, put up a statement on social media after the visit to the White House. And I'm going to read it to you because I think it actually highlights the fact that Jalen Hurts was missing in action. And I want to actually get your thoughts about it as well in the comment section, but here it is. Our time in our nation's capital served as a great reminder of the core values that have brought our team so close together: sacrifice, selflessness, and discipline. Now, just to add a little icing onto this cake, I'm going to read a comment to you because I think it sums up the way Democrats see this. Quote, your dad would be ashamed that you went and shook hands with the modern day Hitler after the sacrifices he made and the life that he risked to beat fascism. I think it's actually disrespectful to the Jews who were murdered by Hitler, by the way, and the family members who are still alive today to tell those stories. I think that is disrespectful to call President Trump Hitler. Why would you water that term down? I don't get it.
Think about Steve Kerr, the head coach of the Golden State Warriors, Greg Popovich, the legendary former coach of the Spurs, Doc Rivers, who won a title with the Celtics and now he's with the Milwaukee Bucks. They crush, and are terrible to Americans, half the country, who voted for Donald Trump. The things they say, and they have declined trips to the White House as well with Trump in there. So I'm not surprised. I respect Jalen's decision. I wish it was just a respect overall for the office itself. These people, in my opinion, need to grow up.
So obviously Democrats will say, well, President Trump doesn't respect the office of the presidency. He has broken norms and customs and traditions, etc. And my thing would be this. Well, Democrats, you say you are the party of being morally superior to Republicans. So why don't you set the example then? Be the bigger person like President Trump was today as it pertains to Jalen Hurts. Now, as you guys already know, Saquon Barkley was in attendance, the star running back of the Philadelphia Eagles, who was catching a lot of heat because he was hanging out with President Trump and golfing over the weekend in New Jersey. Now, here's what he said, and he took it to social media. This got almost 23 million views, by the way. LOL, some people are really upset because I played golf and flew to the White House with the president. Maybe I just respect the office, not a hard concept to understand. Just golfed with Obama not too long ago and look forward to finishing my round with Trump. Now, you guys got to get out of my mentions with all this politics and have an amazing day. Let me just read a couple of comments too, because I'm telling you, this is what's wrong with Democrats. And here is a post from a Dr. Allison Wiltz. She says, you're meeting with President Trump, a racist who called for the lynching of the exonerated Central Park Five, is not the same as meeting with Obama.
This is not just the Eagles, by the way. There are all sorts of public figures who don't do politics, who want nothing to do with it because of how divided it's all about.
And look, the president makes it harder because look what he did to Eagles. You know, he literally said, I'm not rooting for the Eagles because he thinks the owner's against him and all this stuff. I mean, I wish he'd go back to the way Ronald Reagan handled these sports things. He made it easy to be sort of apolitical or nonpartisan about this. The problem is President Trump loves to use these moments for his own political gain. It's good politics for him. I mean, look what he did with the NFL draft. He was looking for somebody to insert his way in, and he found Clay Matthews to do it on his behalf. Clearly, the NFL wasn't going to give him that sort of opening there. So I do think the president does make this feel more divisive than nobody wants this. I think everybody wants to be where Saquon is. That's where I want to be.
No, it's not President Trump making this feel divisive. It's you guys, because everything that he says, you guys have to react. You amplify it. You cram it down people's throats. And people like Jalen Hurts, they eat it up because they don't do their own research. That is the reality, and that's fine. He doesn't have to do it. Entitled to his own opinion, like I stated earlier, this is a free country. But choices do have consequences, of course, and if you decide not to do your research and buy into these narratives, this is what happens. And so to just pin it all on Trump and act like the media doesn't play a role in this is being disingenuous. And by the way, didn't President Trump just sit down for an interview with The Atlantic? Okay, these are reporters who are not fans of him whatsoever. And he's criticized them up and down, but he still sits down with people he disagrees with and has actually engaging conversations. Now, what's interesting is MSDNC thought that one of the reporters that he sat down with would come onto their network and slam him. Well, I guess that didn't happen.
I think one reason he specifically brought us in at The Atlantic and included for the second interview Jeff Goldberg, the editor-in-chief, was it was a little bit of game respects game. He had said in his second Truth Social post that Signalgate was somewhat successful. So Jeff asked him, what did you mean by that? Did you mean that we revealed, operational security flaws that the administration has now fixed? And President Trump basically said, no, you were successful essentially because you got publicity for your story and you really owned that news cycle. And again, that's another window into the president. And also when we were there, he was, and people who know him know this, he has the capacity. He was charming, he was charismatic, and his goal in that moment was to win us, and most specifically Jeff, over. So that was one of the reasons he did it.
So essentially, President Trump is a human. He's definitely a people's person. I don't think you get to where he's gotten in life if you are not a people's person. We know that. He's been very successful in his life. And most people don't want to admit that because they have Trump derangement syndrome. Two things can be true at the same time. You disagree with him politically, but that doesn't mean if you were sitting at a dinner table, you wouldn't enjoy his company, because that is the personality that he possesses. He's just that type of dude. And now I want to hear from you guys in the comment section below, really about two things. Philadelphia Eagles went to the White House today. Jalen Hurts was absent, their star quarterback. And secondly, what about the congressman who nobody knows is planning to file articles of impeachment against President Trump? Let me know what you think about both of those stories in the comment section below. Now, earlier today, the White House announced this week is about celebrating President Trump's first 100 days in office. But you got to see how MSDNC is reacting to all of this. So if you missed out on that story and more from earlier today, all you have to do is click on it because it's coming up right now.